After 3 different winners in 3 races, Formula One has landed in Montreal, Canada at Circuit Gilles Villeneuve. Just 24 points separate Red Bull and Ferrari, and the driver market has dominated headlines this week. We have so much to discuss. Welcome to Weekend Warm-Up from the Canadian Grand Prix. Hello and welcome to one of the most glorious vantage points of this circuit. We are poised in Paddock Club. Yes, they've let us in just above the pit lane, which looms behind us along the start-finish straight as well. And I'm joined by a wonderful lineup. Former Formula One driver Jolyon Palmer, F1 strategist Ruth Buscombe, and our eyes and ears on the ground in every single paddock around the world, Lawrence Barretto. How are we all doing?
Very well, always good to be here. I love this circuit. It's got a bit of old school character to it.
It really does, and it's one that bites as well when there's so much to discuss, not least with the weather right now too. Lawrence, how are you? A busy one for you. You've been doing plenty of writing.
Yeah, in the build-up to this weekend, we had yet more driver announcements. Esteban leaving Alpine, Checo signing for Red Bull, the 2026 regs were announced today. So yeah, from a news perspective, yes, been pretty busy.
Have you had much sleep? Any sleep?
Not enough sleep. Not enough sleep.
Ruth, big welcome back as well. Obviously, Ruth joined us in Miami and now back here in Canada for many races, joining the team this season. How are you doing?
Fantastic, and it's fantastic to be here. This has always been one of my favourite tracks. It's a real strategy track, and it always throws up lots of different strategic options. And as you say, the weather, you can never count it out.
Yeah, there's a lot to get into, not least the unique characteristics of this circuit, not least the weather. The rain is threatening throughout the entire day, and I think big storms forecast tonight and rain expected on each and every day of this race as well. Plus, the track has been resurfaced. You're going to get onto that because I know you've been out there and taking a look. But Ruth, we're throwing you right in at the deep end here, no pun intended, with the rowing lake just across the way. But I'd like you to do our 60-second recap from Monaco, and caveating this with the fact that you were actually at the Indy 500 during the race. So best of luck.
Thank you very much. And the lights went out, and our pole sitter Charles Leclerc kept the lead into Saint-Devoux. Oscar and Sainz once again coming again into turn 1. And there was this front left puncture that went off into Casino Square, and then all of a sudden, chaos. Not just at the front, but also at the back. With, there we go, Perez tagging the Haas sandwich with the right rear, and there was a couple of Alpines as well making contact. All of this drama, all drivers were safe. But there we go, there's the Alpines. All drivers were safe, but unfortunately that did mean a red flag, a restart, and due to Article 57.3, Sainz gets to go back from P16 to P3. Charles still keeps the lead, everyone gets to change their tyres for free, so it was a bit of a management race. We're all in a Esteban on Ocon sandwich. Alonso's backing it up. There was 1 overtake, maybe 2, I think it was 6 actually in total. But it was a little bit of a procession. But the main story obviously has to be, other than a puncture from Stroll, Charles Leclerc, our home hero, finally getting that win that he promised his dad all those years ago. And look at that, what it means to him. And I have to say, I cried from Indy. Really phenomenal race. What an amazing day.
What a recap from Ruth Buscombe as well. The first time we've ever heard regs.
Yeah, that's someone that's fresh out of a race team, isn't it? Article 57.3.
I'm absolutely obsessed with that. I'm still not over Alex Jakes' commentary either, calling that one over the line. He's taken an extra day off. He is joining us this weekend, but not here just yet. He's just bathing in the glory of that moment going viral online, I think.
Have you been studying? Because you're in the booth on Saturday
Jolyon,
morning, learning from the
very
master.
Early. I'm in the booth for FP3, leading the way on that one. And I think Alex Jakes is going down to the pit lane.
After a great commentary, we're benching him for FP3. That's how it works.
Yeah, exactly. But look, an even better weekend for Ferrari than Alex Jakes. Not many had more better than Alex Jakes, but Ferrari did. Charles Leclerc did. What a stunning win it was for him, and one that meant so much. And sometimes that, yes, it wasn't the best of races. It wasn't a classic. We're not going to look back at the highlights very often, but for Charles Leclerc, he certainly will.
Yeah, it was one of the most forgettable races with a really memorable result. And that's just sometimes the reality of Monaco. I'm just so pleased for Charles because he's been so close, and it obviously means so much to him, more than a lot of drivers on their home races. The story that Jakesy so nicely took us through on the final lap, it's all real, and it's like almost like fairy tale story. that was lived out, and that was the real moment of Monaco, wasn't it?
And Ruth, for you as well, you were of course over at the Indy 500, kind of living vicariously through our WhatsApp groups and whatever else. What was the reaction like there, and how much did you enjoy that Indy 500 as well, off the back of a Monaco Grand Prix that was slightly less eventful, it feels, than that race?
Well, it felt very eventful for me. If you know articles and regulations, that was an exciting 45 minutes of red flag. I think you guys are looking at this all the wrong way. No, it was honestly phenomenal. Very long day. Started at kind of 2:30 with the F1 build-up, and then we had a rain delay in Indy. But, I think with Charles, obviously he's like a little brother to me. I was a strategist in his first year in Formula One, and I know how much Monaco, to the people of Monaco, especially to his family, how much that win really meant. And it felt like it was a long time coming. Third time's a charm. And yeah, Jakesy's commentary made me cry all the way from Indy, so that was a difficult one to explain. I was crying over breakfast in Indy, but it was really emotional. Great moment.
Yeah, there weren't many who didn't, I think, have a tear shed or two. Lawrence Barretto, Carlos Sainz, other side of the garage. A great drive from him as well in that race, but yet to announce or settle on a seat for 2025. Sergio Perez, we'll come on to this soon, but has just been confirmed at Red Bull. That rules that seat out for Carlos Sainz. His options seem to be narrowing somewhat. What are you hearing about his future plans?
Alpine is obviously an option, Haas is an option, but it seems like he's narrowed it down to two, to Williams and to Saab at Audi, and he's now got to put both contracts on the table and decide which one offers him the best bet for the next couple of years, whether that's a project that James Vowles is building over at Williams and offers the potential of a Mercedes engine that might react very well to the 2026 regulations, or does he go to the big brand Audi that his father obviously used to race for, that is going to put a lot of money into the sport and probably become a force at some point, but it might take a while. So he's got to decide what kind of project he wants. It feels like it's leaning towards Williams, though.
Yeah, great stuff. Very quickly, I want like a yes and no from both of you in terms of Ferrari and the package they currently have, the way both their drivers are going. Is this a genuine title fight challenge to Red Bull?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes.
Yes?
Yes.
Drivers no, constructors yes.
Great stuff. Thank you very much,
that was
Ruth.
more than one word. If I was allowed one word, I would have said the same.
We'll let Ruth off, that's fine. Okay, moving to McLaren as well, obviously. Oscar Piastri, P2 in Monaco. That would have been some way to take his first win if he'd beaten Charles Leclerc to that one. But Ruth, for them, they seem to be building yet again. They're sort of bubbling along nicely. And importantly, that McLaren is working, operating in a brilliant window at a number of different tracks with different characteristics. Where do you think they sit coming into this one?
Well, I think it all comes down to what this resurfacing and what this track layout actually kind of throws up, because a little bit of an unknown. Kind of on paper, it looks like it could be a three-way fight. The Ferrari is very good at the big braking, though, which is where so potentially they're more in the fight here than they are. So I'm going to go for a three-way fight between the top three.
It is very heavy on the braking zones here, isn't it? It's going to be interesting to see. Oscar Piastri, Jolyon, how impressed are you? Have you been with him so far this season? Yes, his teammate Lando Norris taking the win, but Oscar is right up there. He's knocking on the door, and I think I said it post-Monaco, you feel it's a matter of when, not if, he'll take that win.
It will be, that's for sure, especially with McLaren being quick. I think for me, the biggest thing for Monaco was that McLaren was so fast there, and Oscar nearly had pole. If he had put his lap together in qualifying, he could have had it. And this is a track that theoretically McLaren would have been fearing heading to, even with their upgrade package. So that car is working across high speed, but also low speed. I'm sure they'll be competitive here. And Oscar, he's been in the shadow of Lando really this season. He was decent in Jeddah, but he was amazing in Monaco. And that's the sort of track where, especially when Lando's had the win, he nearly won in Imola, he's on a real roll. For Oscar to bounce back and be the sort of team lead throughout the whole weekend there, I thought was really impressive. Obviously, with Monaco, the barriers are so close, the risk versus reward is really there. It's pretty similar here, so I'm expecting him to be right on it again.
And he was all over the back of Charles Leclerc through those opening laps as well, before, of course, we had the red flag.
His first lap was amazing.
Yeah.
How we were talking about the pile up at the back, Sainz is off, and then you pan to it, and he's almost making a move on Charles for the lead. That's real commitment that he had.
Could have been a different story if we hadn't had that red flag, but we will never know. Lawrence, do you feel McLaren are in the fight in this championship battle as well? Can they get up there? Can they challenge the likes of Ferrari and Red Bull if they continue in this trajectory?
I think if you've got Oscar performing like he did in Monaco, then and Lando obviously still performing at a high level so consistently, yeah, of course. And like Ruth said, the constructors is the more likely world championship fight. it's hardly any points between Red Bull, McLaren and Ferrari. It's so close. Even George today in the press conference was talking about Mercedes getting into the fight. I think that's a bit of a stretch at the minute, but I think it does show you that people are talking about this battle at the front, and it's been a long time since we've said that. And I think for McLaren, they've gone from going to every single track where they thought they'd struggle and say it's going to be difficult, and then outperforming it. I think they genuinely do feel they've got an all-round car now that can perform at every circuit.
I love the fact that some teams now think they're in the fight there as well, because we pan back to last season and teams were like, well, no, this race will be won by Max Verstappen and we're just scrapping for the best of the rest. And now you feel that people, they sense they've got a
really?
fight. Well,
no, but it's great to be optimistic.
Exactly.
And they're obviously they're bringing upgrades as well. If Mercedes win the championship, I will be absolutely gobsmacked at the end of the year. But I like that they're seeing Red Bull there, the target that seemed so far away at the start of the year. McLaren have made it. Ferrari have now made it. They've both won races. And now Mercedes, a little bit by little bit, we're struggling to see it, but they sandwiched Max in Monaco as well. And yeah, they're seeing Red Bull as not the juggernaut that was last year, but actually someone that's catchable.
Yeah, fascinating. I'm sure Red Bull will have something to say about it, and certainly Sergio Perez, who has just signed a brand spanking new contract with the Constructor Champions as well. Let's hear from him earlier on in the press conference.
Checo, why don't we come to you next? Many congratulations are in order. 2 more years with Red Bull. How straightforward were the negotiations?
I think like every negotiation, you always have a process to go through, which is not always really nice to do it in between the races where everything is flat out. So it's really nice, to get this distraction for the team and for myself out of the way, so that we can focus on pure performance. And I think that's the best thing for our team.
Well, Sergio Perez then has signed a new 2-year deal. I think there's been some that have sort of expressed surprise that he has, some very excited to see that the Mexican is still in the mix, and of course backing Max Verstappen. And he's a driver who's secured a 1-2 last season, let's not forget, Ruth. What was your reaction to him signing for Red Bull? How do you see it?
Well, I mean,
re-signing, I should say.
I think it's great news if you're Checo, probably less good news if you're Carlos, and you know that option has been taken off the table. As you say, from a team's perspective, when we're making decisions like this, what we'll have is a whole load of statistics, a whole load of numbers, and a whole load of metrics. And what Red Bull will likely have done is that they'll have set an internal target, and he'll have hit those percentages that'll have been a green light. That means that their kind of internal teams and their strategists have said, actually, we think if he can continue this performance, he can deliver P2, which is ultimately all they need to do to secure that Constructors' Championship. And from a kind of pure strategic point of view, you really just want a driver that's not going to kind of take points off of your other driver by causing trouble or crashing into them. So if he can carry on scoring enough points to get Red Bull the Constructors, then it was a good call. But let's see.
I don't think he's hitting targets, though. He's 8th in Imola, was out in Q1 in Monaco. I think this is, and remember the end of last season was really quite dismal for Checo when Max was romping away with it. For me, this is a signing that keeps Max happy, and that's what Red Bull are trying to achieve. I think Red Bull's rivals will be really happy to see Checo in that car again for the next couple of years, because we're speaking about Drivers' Championship not open, but Constructors is. And that means there's a gap between Max and Checo that potentially both McLaren drivers can fill. Both Ferrari drivers are currently filling. Carlos missed Saudi, and he's still at 1 point ahead of Checo right now. I think that's the opportunity for Ferrari and McLaren, potentially Mercedes in the future as well. Great news for Checo. And I assume this is just Red Bull trying to keep Max happy, because, as you say, Ruth, at least you're not going to have Checo taking points off Max. But I think it leaves the door open for the rivals to just fight in the Constructors, personally.
I think Red Bull really need to keep Max happy, because there's all this talk about Mercedes chasing him, whether or not that is next year's looking less likely, 2026. So they've got to try and keep him in a spot where, because he's delivering at such a high level, you don't want to lose a driver of that quality. I think with Checo, he did the hard work in the first 4 races, second in 3 of the first 4. And I think at that point they thought, actually, he's made some improvements. He felt a bit more comfortable with the car, and I think he decided that he wanted to do it.
But they've signed him early, haven't they? We're 9 races into a 24-race season. Mercedes haven't locked in their drivers yet. They've gone with what they know, and they've gone with it very early, as he's had a couple of stodgy races as well. So they've obviously decided that it's time to keep Max happy. I think this takes Verstappen off the Mercedes table for next year. I imagine that's the big reasoning, because we know there's been some question marks over Max's continuity with Red Bull. will he be there for 26? That's still a question that's ongoing.
And I think what's interesting there is there's going to be clauses within Checo's contract, performance clauses, that he's going to have to deliver, more like a 1+1. He's got to deliver in that first year, and if he doesn't deliver, then maybe they won't continue with him into 26. If he does, of course, they'll keep him.
I feel we could talk about this for some time, but the show must go on, and we have to move to the driver championship standings, loosely segued in there. But let's take a look at how things stand. Max Verstappen, top of the pile still, but just 31 points ahead of Monaco Grand Prix winner Charles Leclerc. As just mentioned by Jolyon, though, Sergio Perez has dropped to P5. He is below Lando Norris and just the 1 point behind Carlos Sainz. Alex Albon also getting off the mark with points, as well as Pierre Gasly too. So they're the standings, and as you say, Red Bull will need both drivers performing, with Ferrari snapping at their heels. Let's talk about this track then, because look, Monaco was a torrid time for them. Max saying simply the actually way that the car is constructed and set up and geometrically designed, they cannot change that to make sure that they are running over these curbs in the right way. Ruth, do you feel with the track resurfacing here, with the curves, with the bumps, with everything that's going on, the factors involved here, the weather, the walls, that this track will suit Red Bull more, or are we still going to see them in a bit of trouble?
Well, if this was the same track as it was in 2023, we would say it's going to be exactly the same as Monaco, because this track is historically fast, it's bumpy, the curbs you really need to ride for performance, and that means you have to run a really soft suspension, which, as we know, that RB20 does not like. But what may have saved them is this resurfacing. We've been out there and it is really smooth. All the curbs have been redone, and that may just move the pendulum back into Red Bull's favour and give them a little bit of a kind of moment.
Jolyon, to drive this track, what's it like? How much of a thrill is it?
Yeah, it's fun. It feels like a street circuit. It's got a lot of combinations of corners. So there's 14 corners. I think there's really 6 combinations of corners. So it's quite simple, but yet technical. As you said, the curb riding is pretty crucial. Trying to find a sequence through turns 3 and 4, and then you've got 5 and 6, the left, right, the sort of double sequence. And then, in fact, the next chicane as well. Yeah. All those 3 chicanes are really tricky. It was quite bumpy. We're yet to see how much they've managed to smooth it out. But yeah, quite fun. And Wall of Champions is not the only wall around here. There's plenty to hit.
Yeah, there really are. And look, weather as well, we've got to talk about it. Is the rain holding off? Because I just like to point out that I'm undercover here, I'm dry, Ruth's undercover. We've stuffed the boys out in the elements. I mean, as much as you can be in the elements in Paddock Club, but...
I was always good in the wet.
Very good.
Haven't needed to be so far today.
Okay, so it's not raining out there, but it's threatening, isn't it? It's incredibly humid as well, very, very close. It's looking to get a bit cooler through the weekend, but there is a threat of rain every single weekend. Ruth, who are you looking at in terms of those drivers who excel in the wet?
Well, it's a familiar name, but Max, honestly, he's phenomenal. Within teams, we look at a lot about racing lines. We don't have that many racing lines here because I haven't had that many wet races. We have quite a lot of wet qualifyings here, but actually the racing lines tend to be slightly different because of the way that the track dries up. Actually, Mr. Ocon is normally rather good in the wet, statistically. Right. And of course, here there's such a high threat of accidents already in the dry that when you add a wet section, it's really going to be completely different. And as Jolyon said, the lines are all changing. So turn 3, such an important sequence. The grass is now gone, and it's now smooth. So the way you set up for that sequence, same as in turn 8, is going to be completely different. So drivers are going to have to relearn dry lines, and then the wet lines may change as well. So it really is all to play for, and that unknown, I think, makes it really exciting.
We've seen weather affect races here in the past. I'm thinking of your favourite race of all time, certainly the longest ever of all time, 2011, won by Jenson Button. Is it your favourite race of all time?
It's up there. It's not my favourite race
okay.
of all time,
okay.
but you know, I think it's my favourite Canadian Grand Prix. Let's put it that way. So yeah, 4-hour race, 6 pit stops. Jenson spent over 2 minutes total in the pits compared to kind of about 47 seconds, which I think one of the cars managed to do. And yeah, it's a really great example of how being on the right tyre at the right time really works. It's one of the strategy lessons you learn. And his performance on the Inter, overtaking this little chap called Sebastian Vettel at the chicane on the final lap to win. If you haven't watched it, go watch it. It's a fantastic race.
Strategists need a lie down after that one, that's for sure. They often do here. It's a tough one, I imagine, for the strategists.
Yeah, in fact, that that race actually changed the regulations. So now we have a maximum time limit because it caused all sorts of problems logistically. So that race is the race why we now have a time limit, even when we have a red flag delay.
And you can watch the highlights of that 4-5 hour race of the Canadian Grand Prix. All of that's on F1 TV as well. Another driver who has historically been absolutely astounding in the wet, of course. No, I'm not talking about Jolyon Palmer. I'm talking about Lewis Hamilton. Let's hear from him now.
Tell us about the car and your chances this weekend. The team is telling us that you're making a lot of progress in recent races. Are you feeling that in the cockpit?
Yes, yeah, the car's continuing to improve. I think that's. I think everyone's obviously taking a step, hopefully closer to the Red Bulls, and I think that's been really positive. But incredibly proud of everyone back at the factory, just how hard everyone's working and how resilient everyone is, and just everyone's just staying very focused, head down. And the morale's really great in the team, so I'm hoping that we can get closer to these guys and start actually competing at the front with these.
I mean, do you think that's possible this weekend? Is a podium on the horizon?
I don't think it's far away, and so we've got the upgrade. Both cars have the upgrade this weekend, so I'm looking forward to seeing how that feels actually on track.
You got the new front wing. Going to out-qualify George this weekend?
I'll try.
All right.
Oof. Was a spicy question there right at the end from Tom Clarkson. Love that. Yes, so Lewis Hamilton, George Russell. I'm enjoying hearing some buoyant words coming from Mercedes. They seem to want to get involved in this fight. They sense a bit of weakness there. Where do you think Mercedes are in this fight at the moment between, look, Red Bull, Ferrari, McLaren? They're trying to get themselves up there, distance themselves from Aston Martin.
Yeah, I think Mercedes have had a fair few false starts, I think, over the last couple of years. They thought they were turning a corner, hasn't really turned out to be the case. I think this new front wing, I think there is genuine optimism that this is going to unlock a lot more potential in terms of pure performance and also what they can do at the direction of the car kind of going forward and with development. I think they are buoyant. Like, just talking to the team today, one of them showed me a graph of like performance curves, and they seem to be developing around the same rate as Ferrari over the course of the year. So I think there is real hope from that team that even if they're not making the massive steps that a McLaren's making at the minute, they are kind of hauling themselves into that fight with Mercedes, with Ferrari and with McLaren, and kind of putting them in the mix. And I think that's why when Lewis was asked about the podium, 2 or 3 races ago, they ruled that out, essentially, and he's not doing that, and George wasn't doing that earlier as well.
That's exciting. Ruth, I'll come to you on this. It was an uncharacteristic mistake from Bono, and indeed from on behalf of Lewis Hamilton, in terms of the outlap in Monaco. Talk us through what happened and the mistake that the team made in not telling Lewis that outlap was critical.
Well, when you're trying to do an undercut, you normally want to be very quiet about it until you come into the pits, because you're kind of trying to creep up on the car in front, get as close as you can to get in undercut range, which in Monaco can be a little bit bigger because of with the traffic. Actually, if you kind of within a few seconds, you probably with one lap in free air, you can jump that Red Bull. But they didn't say to push. And that lap, it's, you know, maybe it's a comms error, maybe it was just a kind of a breakdown in communication, but there's no need to keep it a secret anymore. Once you've boxed, you're on your outlap. The other team have seen that you've boxed, and that's the moment to go hammer time, basically, to make the absolute maximum of that outlap, because you know that the other team has seen what you've done and they're going to try and cover and react the lap later.
Is that an indication that Lewis's and the team, that, you know, Bono's head isn't within the team? What do you think that is? Was that just a simple mistake? We're all human, we make them?
I think so. I really think so. And I think, as you say, the mood in the camp with Mercedes is that this is really maybe a turning point. A front wing isn't just what a front wing brings. If you can get a front wing to work with your aero package, it can bring you extra performance in terms of balance. And of course, this is a Lewis track. He got his first win here. He's always statistically phenomenal around this place. So I think they've got every right to kind of put Monaco behind them and focus on Canada.
Love that. Okay, we'll move on to VCARB now. Yuki Tsunoda once again looking mighty strong, isn't he? He's outperforming Daniel Ricciardo, and of course both seats there, Lawrence, still up for grabs.
Yeah, Yuki's doing a phenomenal job. I think he's one of the top 5 drivers in terms of pure performance if you look at what he's doing with the package that he's got at the minute. And it's coming at the right time because he's trying to convince RB, VCARB, Red Bull to keep him within the family. But he's also attracted attention from other teams, you know, Sauber, Audi, Haas, and even Alpine. They're kind of starting to think, actually, Yuki is a driver that we would want. And that is genuinely the first time that's happened since Yuki Tsunoda's come into the sport. And that just shows, I think, how well he's performing at the minute. From what it sounds like from him today, he's actually almost close to signing for RB and VCarb and getting that deal done and dusted. But then when you've got teams chasing you and they're offering you deals, I can't kind of blame him for wanting to look around.
It's tempting, isn't it? Jolyon, are you surprised he's been overlooked for that second Red Bull seat, considering how well he's performing? Or do you think Sergio Perez is the out-and-out best driver for that role?
Well, I think all of the Red Bull chat has got to be caveated by the fact that lovely that it's very difficult to go up against Max, and we saw that with Alex Albon and Pierre Gasly. So you have to take a driver that you think is going to be a step up from Checo, who we know is he's a race winner. We know he's solid. For me, Carlos was the only driver that would do that. I don't think Yuki's necessarily the answer. But what I think is impressive with Yuki, as you said, is it felt like AlphaTauri were nurturing him for a while, and he maybe was going to be out of a seat in his first year or two, and they kept him in, and the Japanese link was maybe a bit of a tie when Honda were there and more present. They're obviously coming back, but with a different team now. But now he's earned that right, which is what's good. He's ahead of Daniel Ricciardo, and he is now probably your best driver on the market that's not Carlos Sainz. If you're Alpine or you're Sauber Audi or your other teams, assuming Sainz is going to go to Williams, Tsunoda's he's a decent bet now if you're looking around.
Is Sainz going to Williams, Lawrence Barretto?
I do feel like it is leaning that
Really?
way. I think if he's looking on the basis of what's going to offer him the best possible package straight away, it's going to be the Williams, just looking at the form book now. And talking to him today for an interview you'll see later on in the weekends, he just wants a car that can give him a chance to win. That's all he cares about. He was saying he was actually struggling to focus on his future because he just wants to go win races this year. And I think when you're kind of in that mindset, surely your next project is not a long-term project that you could win in 7 years' time. You want something straight away, and I think Williams offers him that best opportunity.
He's focusing very much on the here and now. It is a home race, of course, for Lance Stroll. This is him earlier on from the press conference.
Give us a little bit of history. When did you first come to the Circuit Gilles Villeneuve?
Back in my young days. When I was just a little guy, I remember the Schumacher days, early 2000s. Coming to watch the race here was always a very exciting weekend, inspired me in many ways to be here today.
And you've scored points in 4 of the 5 races you've contested at this racetrack. What is the secret to a good lap?
It's a fun track, it's got some big curbs and technical aspects of it, not much, margin on exits, with the walls being close. So I've always enjoyed the challenge here, and the weather can always be a fun factor too, which it looks like it might be this weekend. So we'll see.
It does, doesn't it? Rain on the forecast. Just quickly, do you think Aston will be more competitive this weekend than they were in Monaco last time out?
I hope so. We seem a little more competitive on the tracks with longer straights, and our cars, I think, pretty efficient. So I hope.
All right. Best of luck. Enjoy the home race.
Well, Lance Stroll enjoying his home race, and a driver who you can see right now will be enjoying FP1 in the place of Esteban Ocon. Friend of the show, Jack Doohan. There'll be eyes on him for sure. Before we get into that driver market chat, I'm going to come to Jolyon on Aston Martin. Fernando Alonso expressing concern they're moving backwards, not forwards. Where do you see them currently sitting, and what can they expect here at the Canadian Grand Prix? Because they seem a bit of a mystery at the moment.
Yeah, I wasn't exactly glowing with praise for them before Monaco, and then they had a bad weekend in Monaco. I think it is the trajectory that's a concern for Aston Martin. Same as last year. Nothing's changed in the couple of weeks. They've got to understand the car better. The only thing that, when we speak about drivers that could be good in the wet, Lance is actually one, especially around here, and Fernando as well. They've got 2 drivers that if it rains, the car's still good enough that they could get a top 3 start. They could do something special. But in the dry, they are a team that are just looking over their shoulders now to the likes of VCarb.
That's such a good point. Lance Stroll is a demon in the wet, actually. Alex Albon here last year, P7 in that Williams, making that car absolutely as big as possible and not letting a single driver past him. He said to me earlier he doesn't feel they have that silver bullet of an upgrade that they brought here last year. But where do you think they can sit, and can he pick up another point or so?
I think Monaco's given the team a ton of confidence. I think a result like that really makes a difference to score points, having not scored, obviously, for the whole season. I think what they can do here, they can't do that silver bullet, like you said, because they haven't been bringing massive packages this year. They've completely changed their philosophy. They've gone for little bits at every single race. They're trying to morph themselves into a big team, and that's kind of how they're operating. I think with James Vowles, what he's trying to do is look at the bigger picture. So I think if they can have some more big days like they did in Monaco, that'll be enough to kind of get them through to the end of this year. And I think it's next year where they're really hoping to make that big step. So it's a case of just taking their opportunities, the rain, the weather that could offer that this weekend.
Points for Williams last time out has moved them above Sauber. And now one driver who's getting very acquainted with the track is Valtteri Bottas. You may have seen him in the background of our shot here. I think he's currently on 3 laps on his bike. I hasten to add, he's not running it, of this track. So he's very much getting acquainted with every bump and curb and curve. Ruth, obviously, of course, you were at Alfa Romeo for a number of years. It's been a tricky start for Sauber, hasn't it? But upgrades are coming. How do you feel the team will fare here?
Well, I mean, it's a track that's completely different to Monaco. Obviously, the Monaco weekend wasn't a great one for them. But, you know, I think both Valtteri and Joe, they're good at resetting. We had a great result with that team in 2022, P7 and P8, a real kind of David and Goliath moment. So they'll be coming here and they'll be remembering 2022, and they'll be remembering the fact that that was one of the strongest races that we had in that year. And I'm sure that they'll be giving it their all. And he's off inspecting the curbs nicely. He'll like a smooth track as well. So I think the changes, especially for Valtteri, will go in his favour because he tends to excel on these smooth tracks. If you remember, he was always the king of Sochi for that reason.
He will be enjoying the smooth track on his bike and probably not riding the curbs on those skinny road tyres, I'm sure. Haas, I'm going to throw this out there. Any of you can take it. But look, they have been in the controversy, it seems, most race weekends. Of course, a double DNF, and my God, didn't my fantasy team know about that last time out in Monaco. Kevin Magnussen with just 2 penalty points to spare before he potentially gets a race ban. Who wants to pick up Haas and where they go from a double DNF in Monaco? Jolyon, I'm coming to you.
Rebuilding the cars
Well,
for a start, because they were pretty mangled, not quite as much as Perez's, but big damage, really silly damage for them. I think Ayao Komatsu wouldn't have been particularly impressed. Starting from the back in Monaco, they already had the technicality in qualifying that wasn't a great bit of team cohesion, bit of miscommunication there as well. I still think they're okay this year. I still back actually both their drivers. I think Kevin and Nico are both solid peddlers in the midfield. But obviously K-Mag's got to be careful with those points, and he's going to get them at some point, because he just, as we saw in Monaco, he's got no chill. He knows if there's a gap, he'll take it. If the gap's 1 millimetre to the wall and 1 millimetre to Sergio Perez, in Monaco from 16th position, he'll take it. That's just K-Mag.
He is fighting for a seat, but he also has Ollie Behrman waiting in the wings as well. And Ollie Behrman is here in his reserve driver role for Ferrari. We'll have him as well on our pre-qualifying show. So it'll be great to get the thoughts of Ollie Behrman. But look, that is a team in which there is a seat, 2 seats available as things stand. Esteban Ocon has been linked to that team amongst many because, of course, it was announced just this week that he will be leaving Alpine at the end of the season. Let's hear from Esteban Ocon now.
Hey, Esteban, good to see you. Obviously, it's been a challenging week for you. I feel for you, the message you put out about the difficult message you've had, then obviously the news you're leaving Alpine. Kind of just what are the overriding emotions right now?
Yeah, I mean, I felt the need, that it was important to speak up, in that moment. And I've written obviously that statement, and it was clear that, it was the right time to do so. Now, obviously, I'm not going to come back on everything that has happened in Monaco. We've discussed a lot of things internally inside the team, and obviously the big news is that we agreed together not to continue in 25. It's been several months that we are talking with Alpine, with various other teams as well, and we felt that it was the good time for me to look elsewhere, to have some exciting challenges ahead, and I'm excited to be here in the meantime and to be racing and doing more racing than talking, hopefully.
Well, just one more question about it before we get on to this weekend. You mentioned that obviously you've been talking to other teams. Was it a surprise, the timing of it, when you found out or decided to announce this news? And how optimistic are you that you're going to be on the grid next year? Because it does seem like a lot of teams want you.
Yeah, I mean, as I said, we are talking with various other teams, and at the moment, it's not the right time to talk about it because there's nothing to announce yet. But I will announce my future when the time is right and when it's in due course.
Nothing to announce just yet. Lawrence Barretto, as I said at the start of the show, your eyes and ears are... Is that the expression, eyes and ears on the ground, or just the ears? Yeah, you're everywhere, aren't you?
I am everywhere, yeah. Not in a creepy way.
No, not lurking, no, but just invited. Anyway, Esteban Ocon out of Alpine. How do you see how that went down? Because obviously, from an outsider perspective, it was a very quick, knee-jerk reaction to what happened in Monaco with that first lap collision with his teammate Pierre Gasly. Bruno Famin was demonstrably and publicly furious after what happened, saying there will be consequences, and then this. Is it a direct result? And how do you think it went down? He was saying it's a mutual thing, but what have you heard?
So I think the team are at pains to say it wasn't a direct result of what happened in Monaco, but it did play a part in the wider decision that, Esteban and Alpine just weren't meant to be anymore. I think there were a number of factors that the team put together, and they decided on that Thursday, after he'd been in the sim, Bruno said to him, Esteban, we're not going to renew your contract. Now, obviously, at this point, Esteban had talking to multiple teams beforehand, so Alpine would have been aware of that. They've been talking to other drivers as well, so I don't think it's a surprise for either side. But I think the timing of it is interesting. They've obviously done it straight after Monaco, after this clash, which came after the wheel-to-wheel for a whole lap in Miami. I think there was a clash earlier in this year that got very close in Japan or China. So this has been building, and what's this, the 6th or 7th incident he's had with a teammate over his career? So I'm not surprised that it's happened, but maybe the timing is a bit of a surprise. But I think Esteban, as you heard him then, he's not downbeat. I think that's because he's basically got a deal done. He's close enough to know where he's going to go, and I think that's going to be either Haas or Sauber Audi.
So there will be a seat for him. And just a point, of course, Esteban putting out that statement earlier in the week as well, basically talking about the amount of abuse that he's received online, and that's just something that no driver should have to put up with at all. Jolyon, coming to you, who do you think will be in that Alpine seat? And I just want your reaction on the fact that a couple of years ago, Alpine had Esteban Ocon, Fernando Alonso and Oscar Piastri. And that was a dilemma for them. They now have none of those drivers.
Yeah, well, they've got to retain Gasly. That's now a clear. It's also interesting that Ocon's been the stronger driver at Alpine this year. I thought Pierre was impressive last season, but Monaco was the first time he's actually out-qualified Esteban this season. So, and even then, it was very close. So, the faster driver this year has actually been shown the door. I do think Esteban will end up somewhere else. I think he's a good enough driver to warrant a place somewhere. But they're in quite a quandary, Alpine now. Where do they go? Jack Doohan's in the car in FP1. He has got, out of nowhere, an absolutely golden chance because basically the drivers are all clamouring for seats everywhere else. No one really wants to go to Alpine. Someone like Bottas, I think, could be an interesting signing. Sonoda, if they can lure Sonoda away from RB, I think would be a good signing, back with his old teammate. Would be a nice team for Alpine next year. But they were 4th in the championship 2 years ago. And now we're talking about them being one of the least desirable, maybe the least desirable team to sign for. It's an amazing turn of events.
I think they've just had a very difficult time. They've basically lost all of their senior staff over the course of a year. Rob White leaving again earlier this week. He was head of operations. They've got a new chief of operations there. But it's just another bit of discomfort, I think, and instability at that team. And I think that might make them slightly less attractive. And Alpine have got a dilemma to make. I think they've got to decide whether or not they want to prove that their academy works, and so this is the perfect opportunity to put a Jack Doohan in the car. A Victor Martins, although he's struggling a little bit to deliver in F2. It's looking less likely they're going to bring Mick Schumacher in from WEC, even though he is doing a very good job, I think, over there in sports cars. I think Jolyon's right, they've got to keep Gasly. They've got to have that consistency going into this year, and Bottas has had some talks with them, so maybe they can get him. If they can convince Sonoda, I genuinely think that would be a good shout.
Even someone like Kevin Magnussen, he was my teammate there in 2016. So I think, yeah, they haven't got the fresh choice that they might have had in years gone by. So, no one that's currently on the grid is probably off the market for them right now.
And Ruth, you're going to be taking a deeper dive into this. She's just found this out by reading the running order, by the way. We thought we'd just surprise her. Yui, Alex Jakes' latest contestant in his favourite game, which is to fill in the driver market for 2025. How are you feeling about that one?
Yeah, I'm feeling very excited. I have to say, I've been a little bit distracted by this pit stop practice that's going on before. And relevant to this race weekend, Lewis Hamilton doing a lesser spotted track walk, which means the track must have changed significantly.
There you go. See, we wouldn't have noticed that here.
Is it
Gabbing
track
on
scooter?
about the driver
Track
market.
scooter.
Is he on his scooter?
Yeah, he's gone. He's gone. He's probably looking at the lack of grass in turn 3 right now.
Valtteri Bottas still out on his bike as well. You will be up against Alex Jakes in that driver market chat. The regulations for 2026, they have also just dropped. We'll be looking at more agile, lighter, more competitive, more sustainable cars racing in 2026. And Sam Collins will be taking a deep dive look into these on Tech Talk. And of course, we'll be talking about them throughout the weekend as well. We've got plenty of guests to bring you to on F1 TV this weekend. Jack Doohan will be joining us fresh from FP1, taking the place of Esteban Ocon. And don't forget, Esteban Ocon also has a 5-place grid penalty drop here based on that collision with Pierre Gasly, his teammate in Monaco. Ollie Behrman will be joining us, as well as Frederick Vesti. So a bumper lineup, and not just you 3 lovely people as well. Should we take a look at the schedule and how things line up for this Canadian Grand Prix weekend here in Montreal? FP1, we will be on 1:15 building up to that one. FP2, 4:45 p.m. here, track time. FP3, 12:15 building up to that 3rd hour of running before our pre-qualifying show. That is at 3:30 p.m. ahead of the 1 hour of qualifying. And then 1 p.m. will be on air for our pre-race show ahead of the Canadian Grand Prix. So a bumper weekend to bring you, and plenty of guests and chat as well in what appears and feels to be an incredibly busy time for Formula One. But now, listen, we need to talk about F1 fantasy, because Monaco, you be quiet, Lawrence, Monaco was not good. I am talking about Wolf Simp. You were on minus 117 points. Meglio Di Gasly, you were on minus 212 points from the weekend. And in fact, 200,000 people out there ended up on minus points from the weekend. And I thought I had a shocker with Red Bull and the 2 Haas drivers in my team. Lawrence, I think you overhauled me on like 154 points or something awful. I am still leading though, don't worry.
I basically thought I was out of this championship in the course of one race weekend. To be fair, Laura, you gave me some advice before the weekend. I ignored it, but it was fine. It was nice to have the advice. I've turned things around and I'm back in the fight with you guys. I'm delighted.
You have, but you did play your no negative, and none of your drivers scored a negative point.
Yeah,
so
that was one of the bits of advice I did follow from you.
Sorry, it's a waste of a chip for you.
Yes.
Jolyon, how's your team getting on?
Yeah, fine.
Yeah.
Absolutely fine.
The winner last year, he's done it once, doesn't need to bother anymore.
Absolutely
He'll probably still end up winning it somehow. And Ruth, I'm very glad you haven't got a team, because you'd be so far ahead of all of us.
I feel like it's cheating.
Yeah, it's actually cheating. It's some form of doping. Okay, let's get predictions from all 3 of you, please, ahead of this weekend. Jolyon, come on.
I'm going to go with Verstappen back on the top, Sainz second, Norris third.
Okay.
I'm going to go with a Sainz win, a Leclerc second, a Max third.
Okay.
I'm going to go for, looking at the track, a Max win. Then I think, let's give Carlos P2.
Okay.
And then I'm going to go rogue. I'm going to say Lewis. He's with that Mercedes. He's really good round
Just
here.
because of the track run, right? The track
You know,
run.
Qatar last year, he did a track run as well. So, like, you know, it's a special thing when you see a Lewis
He
track
crashed out
walk.
first corner, didn't he?
But he saw turn 1.
Knew that outside line.
Excellent stuff. I'm going to go completely rogue, and I'm going to say we have an Oscar Piastri win. His first win comes in Canada. I'm going to say a Max Verstappen P2, and fresh off Monaco at Charles Leclerc P3. There you go. We'll see how wrong we are come Sunday. But thank you all very much for a brilliant weekend warm-up here. So much to discuss. And we'll be continuing to chat all about it throughout the course of the weekend. And as Jolyon mentioned earlier, a few of our roles have been flipped on their heads. I think Alex Jakes will be in the pit lane. You'll be getting in the pit lane at some points. You might be trackside. That's your normal position. But I'll be heading into the commentary booth as well, which will be a lot of fun for FP3 and indeed FP2 as well. But for now, big thanks to all of you for watching. We have so much to look forward to here in Montreal. We will see you tomorrow for Free Practice Friday. Bye for now.
welcome to the Canadian Grand Prix. It is one of Formula One's favourite stops on the calendar. And the Canadian Grand Prix is go! Oh, it's a miracle he made that corner.
Superb racing.
Into the wall and out of the race.
I love a bit of that.
He gets close.
No, not like that. They're stealing the race from us.
Max Verstappen wins the Canadian Grand Prix.
Yeah, not bad that.